This is a vote that has two rounds. The first round will be one that includes half of the votes coming from the rank and file of the party, the other half coming from all of the members of Japan's parliament who are affiliated with the LDP. If one of the candidates gets a majority of votes in this first round, it's over. But this year there are 9 candidates running, so it's a bit chaotic and it's almost impossible to imagine any one of them would get a full majority. So then it moves on to round two, where the members of parliament once again each get one vote, but Japan's 47 prefectures each get 1 point. So it becomes much more of a matter of who has the most friends within parliament. And that is probably where the runoff election will end up tomorrow, with the top two candidates facing off against each other. And perhaps around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, we'll know who Japan's next prime minister will be.
And who are the front runners among the record 9 candidates?
Well, there are 3 candidates who seem most likely to advance to the second round. One of them is Shinjiro Koizumi, a 43-year-old who will be Japan's youngest prime minister if he wins. He's the son of the very popular prime minister from the early 2000s, Junichiro Koizumi, and he was so popular they made stuffed animals of him, like the one that's on the shelf behind me right now. But he has a reputation as the next generation of the LDP, although he's quite inexperienced. The second option is Mr. Ishiba, who is more of a veteran of the party, an expert on defense policy and natural disasters, who has big ideas about what to do to help the countryside in Japan, maybe even to make an Asian NATO, he says, but he doesn't have a lot of friends within the party itself. Then the third choice is Miss Takaichi, who, if she wins, will become Japan's first female prime minister, and she will offer a very conservative view similar to that of former Prime Minister Abe.
Is it a case of the old guard versus the new? Outgoing leader Fumio Kishida has warned that his successor must lead a new LDP.
Well, in the case of all of these candidates, although the young Koizumi presents a fresh face of a new generation, he and the other two aren't planning to really shake up the party in any meaningful way. They're not going to have new investigations of the scandals that brought down Mr. Kishida's popularity. They're not really going to change policies that much. This is still the same LDP, still the same lawmakers. And although they'll probably call an election soon, it's still going to be the same people running for the same seats. So it will be at most a surface level change to what the LDP actually is.
And how unusual is it to have 2 women in the running? I mean, Japan could have its first ever female prime minister. What would that mean for the country?
Well, in the past, there have been female candidates in the LDP leadership race, but they have not reached the second round. In this case, Takaichi has a very good chance of becoming prime minister. They're saying it's really a toss-up between these top 3. Nobody's really sure which one of them is going to win. So it would be a big thing for a woman to become prime minister, but she is a conservative, a very conservative person with social views that are far to the right of most Japanese voters. She's probably the most conservative of all 9 candidates running in the race. So it's not like it would be some kind of feminist wave of change for women's status in Japan. Nonetheless, it's very significant for Japan to have a woman as prime minister for the first time in its history, if it does happen.
And whoever is elected, what are some of the immediate challenges the new leader will be faced with?
Well, the biggest challenge will be calling a new election. It's expected that any of these 3 candidates will want to call a general election as soon as possible, possibly before the American presidential election. So we're talking about the end of October. And so they need to prove that they could lead the party to an electoral victory. Technically, they could wait until October 2025 to call an election, but it seems like the best thing to do is to call it now, before voters have a chance to really scrutinize the new face of the party, and it will solidify their standing so that they can move forward with whatever policies they want to really push.
Meanwhile, Jeff, in another development in Japan, an 88-year-old man who spent 46 years on death row has been found not guilty of multiple murders. What can you tell us about this case?
Well, this is a case that has been in the news for decades in Japan. This man, Mr. Hakamada, he was a former professional boxer, and back in the 1960s, it seems that police unfairly judged him as a criminal because of his background in boxing. They may have staged some of the evidence, and it took many decades of work by his sister, who is now 91 years old, and many lawyers to finally turn public opinion and gain the evidence that was needed to really bring this to a retrial to exonerate him. But he's now 88 years old, and he spent decades in solitary confinement, and his mental state is said to have been very severely impacted. He isn't really even able to coherently speak about many things because he would just spend day after day alone, unable to talk to people. So it's really going to bring about a new re-examination of whether or not it should be easier for people to have retrials in Japan, whether or not convicted criminals should have better access to evidence to plan retrials, although it doesn't seem like it's going to have much impact on changing whether or not the death penalty will continue to exist in Japan.